Hi, I'm Michael Smith. At Berkeley College, we're committed to educating the public about the importance of higher education and its impact on our communities. That's why we're proud to support the important educational programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation and their partners in public television.
Funding for this edition of Caucus New Jersey has been provided by Josh S. Weston, Investors Bank, Berkeley College, Suez, ready for the resource revolution, Delta Dental of New Jersey, everyone deserves a healthy smile, Johnson & Johnson, and by the New Jersey Office of the Insurance Fraud Prosecutor. Insurance fraud costs New Jersey families $1,300 a year. Promotional support provided by The Record, North Jersey's trusted source, and NorthJersey.com. And by NJ Biz, all business, all New Jersey.
Hey folks, Steve Adubato here. It is our pleasure to welcome Dr. Robi Ludwig, who is a psychotherapist and author of a book called Your Best Age Is Now. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely.
Even if someone says, wait a minute, they're lying about their age, some of us are like, hey, really? You know, you don't want to be that honest. Or we think back, it was better that now?
Well, I think for the people who lie about their age, it's because of their concern of how other people will experience their age. I mean, I know that was the case for me. I was on a job interview for television, and they asked me my age, and I told them this was several years ago, and I remember thinking, I don't think that's legal, but it's not legal, but I told them because I was always honest about my age, but I had a concern. I was like, what will my age mean to them? Will it knock me out of the ballpark? Is this really it? And it really kind of set me on this journey of what midlife means to people, the negative kind of script we subscribe to because of our culture. And I'm so glad I did research and found lots of positive aspects of this time of life.
Who'd you talk to?
Well, for my book, I talked to Suzanne Summers, I talked to Kathy Lee Gifford, I talked to Hoda Kotb, I talked to Joan London, Kate White, all these amazing women who had a lot of wise, sage information to share about what it's like to arrive at midlife, some of the concerns they had. For Kathy Lee, she's very spiritual. So she talked about how her spiritualism really opened up seeing the world in a different way and finding meaning in a different way, which we know if you find meaning, that's where your mental health comes from. That's where your physical health comes from. But we live in a culture that tells us that youth is where it's at. We have an over-idealization of youth. And so
Misplaced?
It is misplaced. It is. I mean, I think there's a fantasy subscribed to that if you're young, then you have a lot of possibilities ahead of you.
But hold on, before we go any further, why wouldn't we want to tell younger people that?
Well, we should.
But
But
does that, by the zero-sum mentality, there's only so much to go around, therefore there's not much for those who are of a certain age?
That's the problem. So once you leave youth, whenever that time is, the message is it's over for you. It's a time of loss. It's about what you're losing. You're losing your looks. You're losing your mind. You're losing people being interested in you.
You're losing your, dare I say, in this business of television, which clearly has nothing to do with your ego.
Yeah.
That's a joke.
Right.
You're losing your relevance.
Right. People won't notice you.
We're losing our sense of being relevant in the world?
Yes, and I was talking to this Harvard psychologist, and I said, well, what about when people tell you they stop being recognized, they stop being noticed, and they feel irrelevant? And she said, Robi, that's true of everybody. And when you think about it, there is a lot of truth to that. Think about the selfies. Everybody documenting everything, which I think can be a great thing. I don't have a problem with telling our youth the future's ahead of them. It is. What I do have a problem with is telling people who are at midlife and beyond that there isn't that same future. Because of science, Midlife is really a new time of life. And if we give up on ourselves, which is really the message, then we're wasting this time of life where we're wise, we're more confident in many ways, we know ourselves better, we can handle conflict better, we can read people better. We see the positive side of life because of the changes going on in our brain, and all of this information was really nowhere to be found. And I wanted people to have this information in a book so they could say, oh my gosh, I'm not decompensating at 45 and beyond. There really is a lot of positive things going on for me, and I want to use that to my advantage.
So, Robi, let me ask you this. How does what you are saying and the research in this book comport with the whole concept of retiring at whatever age? Because you're talking about the opposite. You're talking about new possibilities,
Right.
new opportunities, and someone saying, well, I'm thinking I want to pack it in and stop working at 64 or whatever that number is. And you're saying, wait a minute, you're going to, our life expectancy is much longer. Like, what are you going to do?
Right. And there was a new study that came out saying that people who retired early ended up not living as long. Listen, if somebody says to me their goal is to retire early, fine. You know, some people want to do that and then they find a second life of doing something else.
But do you say, and do what? Does it matter, and do what? Like, say someone
No.
says, I'm just going to do nothing. Does that matter? Or
Yes,
do you
that
say,
would matter in my private practice. I
Because?
would say that's not healthy because people at midlife and beyond really need to find their purpose, really need to do something that they feel is meaningful for their life in order to feel fulfilled, in order to feel happy, and in order to be healthy. So if someone wants to retire and do something artistically, great. Travel the world, fine. But the economic truth is most of us are not going to be able to do that. And so I think it's really important for corporations to understand, let's not get rid of our older people so fast.
What's all the mandatory? I know of some companies there's mandatory retirement
Right.
at 65 years old.
Right. Because I think there's something called salaryism. And also, older workers or people in midlife have to bring their best game. They need to bring their A game because there is this judgment. If you're earning a lot of money and maybe you've gotten a little comfortable, the two is not a, the two combined together is not a winning combination.
I want some of the specific, tangible advice that you offer that I really like here. React to some of this. How about letting go of stress to create a more balanced life? How?
Yeah, well, meditate, exercise. Think about what you're saying to yourself. We really need to edit what we're saying so that if we get overwhelmed, we need to stop and think about the thoughts that we're having. How realistic are they? Are we treating ourselves well? Are we eating right? All of these things really do matter in terms of how good we feel about ourselves. And really about stress management. Are you turning to friends? That's what I talk about. We really need to reboot during midlife, and midlife is very similar to adolescence, where it's a stop and pause moment. We want to figure out who we are. And so it's really the time to think about what's good for me, and to pose those questions for yourself so that you're alive and energetic. Listening to music is wonderful. Think about what your younger self would say to your older self, all really important. Adolescents turn to their friends in order to reduce their stress level. That's something adults sometimes forget, the power of touch, the power of friendship, the power of spirituality. All of these things reduce our stress level.
How about looking at our love life and our relationships?
There's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to relationships, especially for women and men. For example, this is the time that a lot of women initiate divorces. And when you think about midlife crisis, we think about a man choosing a younger woman and leaving their marriage. Not really statistically the case. Women will often look at their relationships, I'm sure men too, and say, can I be happy in this relationship? And if the answer is no, then they often feel like they have enough life ahead of them to make a different choice. Not necessarily what I recommend, but relationships make us feel gratified to love and be loved in the right way.
And if you're not getting it,
if
and
you're
haven't
not
gotten it for a long time,
yeah, then explore it with a professional because it's a very complicated process.
stop there and someone says, hey, it's just the way it is, leave it alone. This is my lot in life, you say?
I say you have to be proactive about what you want and working towards what you want. You can't be passive. You really need to be aggressive towards pursuing the type of relationship you want, the type of work life you want, how you want to look. But I think what we need to know is to not give up on any area of our life, because once we do, once we accept that, then we can anticipate a lot of losses.
Is there a self-fulfilling prophecy there?
I do. I think so. Yes. Once you start saying there's nothing left for me, we make that true. It's called confirmation bias. We tend to make true what we believe is true.
You're good.
Thank you.
Your best age is now, Dr. Robi Ludwig. Great stuff. Thank you so much for helping
Thank
a lot of people.
you.
Appreciate it. Stay with us. We'll be right back right after this.
To see more Caucus New Jersey with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato PhD. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
We are pleased to be joined by Dr. Robert Jyung, attending physician at University Hospital, and his colleague, Dr. Nicole Raia, audiologist at University Hospital. Good to see both of you. We are here to talk about hearing loss. 20% of Americans have experienced or do experience some form of hearing loss?
I'd say that's true, but we have to be clear that the 20% represents many different types of hearing loss.
What types?
Well, there's a basic breakdown. You have what we call nerve damage, which is sensory neural hearing loss, and there are mechanical types of hearing loss called conductive hearing loss. And those two things have very different underlying causes, and they have very different forms of treatment.
How does one know?
Well, we turn to our audiologists and we ask them for help.
So we see patients from birth to the geriatric population. Every newborn in this country receives a newborn hearing screening. So that gives us a newborn hearing screening. We call it universal newborn hearing screening.
What does that tell us?
That tells us, it teaches us about children who are at risk for hearing loss.
Right.
We screen children using tube measures. We use a different measure for well babies versus babies that are in the NICU.
Right.
And determine if a follow-up appointment with an audiologist for a diagnostic evaluation is warranted. So
I'm curious about this. Given the fact there are different kinds of reasons, there are different reasons for hearing loss, the treatments that are available today, doctor, versus say 10, 15, 20 years ago, dramatically different?
Some things are still similar. For example, there are surgical ways to address mechanical types of hearing loss. Some of those haven't changed too dramatically, but
what is the biggest change? Or some of the biggest changes?
I would say the efficiency and the technology that we use to address some of these surgical issues has improved a lot. But technology has helped us to address the sensorineural hearing losses as well. And the biggest change over the last few decades has been the cochlear implant. The cochlear implant, I hear a lot about that. What is it? Well, it's a device that is surgically implanted, and it is stimulated from the outside through a microphone that picks up the sounds and converts it into electrical signals through a processor, and that is passed through the skin into a receiver stimulator that then sends the signal in a processed form down to electrodes that are in the cochlea, or the inner ear. So it's in your head?
It's a two-part system. So there's the part that Dr. Jyung implants in the skull, and then there's the outside part that you put on and take off every day, the processor, and that's managed by the audiologist.
Is it replaceable? What do you...
Well, what changes primarily is the external processor. So as the technology improves, the companies can bring out newer and better products with different features. The part that's implanted is generally kept in for very long periods of time, although there is the potential to upgrade those if need be.
Who's the candidate for that?
Generally people who are profoundly deaf and who can no longer benefit from hearing aids.
Talk children. What kinds of issues are they facing early on, and how does it potentially impact their ability to learn? Because anecdotally, I've heard that there are many children, or there are a significant number of children, who have hearing issues that may not be picked up in the way they need to be picked up, and the way they suffer from an educational point of view is just profound.
So in order to be able to learn to speak, you really need to have good access to sound. So those are the children that we are picking up on very early with our newborn hearing screening, are the children with moderate to profound sensorineural hearing losses or permanent conductive hearing losses. The children we're missing are those mild hearing losses or the losses that occur later, whether they be permanent conditions or conductive hearing losses from children, say, that get fluid in their ears. We know that 2 to 3 out of every 1,000 children born in the United States has a permanent type of hearing loss.
Hold on.
Between 2 and 3 children.
Out of every 1,000?
Out of every 1,000 born.
Has a permanent?
Yes.
That from birth or at any point?
No, from birth.
From birth. But the other one, you said from fluid in the ear?
So children are at higher risk for middle ear effusions just because of their anatomy and the way that their anatomy differs from an adult. And 8 out of 10 children that are school age will experience some kind of transient hearing loss or a temporary type of hearing loss.
So the whole issue of ear infections in children, we react as parents. Where is the danger point when it comes to issues of hearing loss?
So a lot of middle ear infections in kids can resolve with antibiotics, sometimes just with observation even, but there's a type of disease that can come from chronic ear infections. That's what we call chronic otitis media. And they can have holes in the eardrums, they can have chronic drainage, and they can develop another disease process called a cholesteatoma, which is an invasive process where skin erodes into your temporal bone.
How do we know this?
Well,
does a pediatrician pick that up?
They may or may not. Sometimes these things will not go recognized immediately. So a history of drainage out of the ear that occurs spontaneously and regularly, that has a bad smell, that may even have blood tinging it, these are all things that need to be paid close attention to.
So I don't want to say this wrong, an Osseointegrated device. What is it and who's a candidate for it?
So an Osseointegrated auditory implant is a different type of device as compared to a cochlear implant.
It is different?
It is different.
What is it?
It is a titanium post that is placed behind the ear, again, by Dr. Jyung or the otologist. And then there's a processor that is placed. The difference is in how it works. It works through vibration. So we know that we can stimulate a healthy or normal working cochlea through vibration. So we're bypassing your middle ear to stimulate the inner ear directly.
Who's the candidate for it?
A person who has a permanent conductive hearing loss, either bilateral or unilateral, or a patient who has no hearing in one ear, what we call single-sided deafness. We can put the processor on the side that does not hear and send the information to the better hearing ear.
Before I let you out of here, I'm curious, from a prevention point of view, are there any things that we can do to prevent or reduce the chances that our children will have a hearing loss, that we will have a hearing loss? Anything we can do?
Well, you can certainly put restrictions on how much they overuse devices that put too much sound into their ears. So the personal listening devices, headphones, the earbuds, and listening to music.
You're not a fan of overuse?
Well, I think I really appreciate music, but I think that you can appreciate it without hammering your ears with too much sound.
Anything else on this?
Parents don't realize that many MP3 players have a parental control option that can be password protected, or you can buy headphones that don't get louder than the recommended volume.
So we as parents have a responsibility here as well. Beyond what is potentially genetic, beyond the things that we cannot control, we need to be aware of what we can control and influence and take responsibility.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I want to thank both of you for coming in and talking about very important issues that have to do with our hearing, our children's hearing, and what we can and cannot influence, but what we need to know. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Stay with us. We'll be right back. Thank you very much.
To see more Caucus, New Jersey with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato PhD. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
We're pleased to welcome back our good friend Jim Kirkos, Chief Executive Officer of the Meadowlands Regional Chamber. Good to see you, Jim.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
For those who don't know, describe the Chamber.
The Chamber is a business service organization. We currently represent just under 1,200 companies in the greater Meadowlands area. And our main focus is advocacy, economic development, transportation infrastructure, and just representing businesses of all sizes, small, medium, and large companies.
What's happening over in the Meadowlands these days?
You know, it is never, I say this all the time, it's never a day without controversy in the Meadowlands, but we charge on. Lots of good things happening. The commercial real estate market is really hot. It's on fire. The property values are strong. We're still waiting for American Dream to, get its financing so we can restart construction there. But we're really optimistic about that project and what it does to the economy.
I am still.
Yes, very much so. I mean,
why?
Because I know how much is involved there. I know how much the Gramasian family, 555, the company, has put into it. And while people don't see how much is there as driving by on the highway, they see inactive cranes. There's been $300 or $400 million already constructed in the infrastructure there, and so once they complete the financing, the rest of the construction moves on.
Jim, one of the initiatives that we haven't talked about is this Accelerator Program, New Jersey Business Incubation Network, an accelerator program we do in cooperation with Bergen Community College.
Right.
What is that?
The incubator is great. It was originally started in the Meadowlands by the New Jersey Meadowlands Commission. And then when the Bergen Community College chose to locate its Meadowlands campus on Wall Street West in the Lyndhurst Corporate Park, which was a brilliant decision to do that, right in the middle of a vibrant corporate hub, they took over the incubator. And,
what does that mean, the incubator?
So it's an opportunity to incubate and accelerate startup companies, businesses that have great ideas, need a place to just get started, have an office environment, have the resources, a conference room, and all other business services readily available to them so they can concentrate on building their idea and getting their idea and their business to the next level. So you provide companies with a year or two of those particular low-cost services, and you incubate a successful, new innovation.
Why? I mean, you and I have talked about entrepreneurship a lot, both on and off the air. Why is entrepreneurship so difficult for many of those who see themselves as entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurship? Well,
I think there's a little bit of a gap between innovation and actually running a business. So God bless us here in this country. We have an enormous amount of innovation. We have great creativity. Great ideas, great energy. But the people sometimes that launch those great ideas don't necessarily know how to write a business plan, how to really seek out the proper financing, how to structure their company for success. And that's where the help comes into play. So these business accelerators and, quite frankly, organizations like mine throughout the state, that's what we do.
What do you get out of that? What does the Chamber get out of that?
Well, that's our mission. You have to buy into the mission. I've bought into the mission. I operated a small business for 25 years before leading and taking over the Chamber.
What's it take?
What does it really take? I worked 23 years. I worked 7 days a week, probably 15, 18 hours a day. It takes a lot of work, a lot of hard work.
So someone says, I want to, quote, be my own boss, run my own business, quote, because I don't want to have to work so hard. You say? I say there's no easy way to success. Hard work, building a work ethic, and so most creative entrepreneurs that come in, they have that. Right? Yep. Every once in a while, you come across somebody that has that attitude, and Jim sits them down and says, listen, let me tell you the reality. Yeah, I find it funny as well when I hear people say, they go, really? Yeah. You want that responsibility of all those employees, making the payroll, paying their health benefits. Trust me, you got to be out there doing it all the time. And you know what happens? So what I try to do is I put both success stories and war stories in front of these entrepreneurs. Why both? Because there's so much of a learning experience. You're not trying to turn them off with the war stories. But they just need to understand them. Like my personal war story is that when I was growing my company, at one particular point in time, my business was struggling so much, I had 50 weeks of my personal paycheck sitting on my microwave. My wife and I, who were recently married, lived off of our savings account. I couldn't cash my paychecks. And then all of a sudden, I got our business together, and slowly but surely in the following year, we were cashing the checks. But it had to be done. But it had to be done. Because that's what it means to be an entrepreneur. My employees had to be paid. I was paying my employees before I was paying me. Real quick, Hispanic chamber connected with you guys, right?
Yeah, actually, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Carlos Medina and his organization, has taken up residence at the Accelerator at Bergen Community College. It's a brilliant move, and I think the Hispanic entrepreneurial market is really growing strong, especially in that part of the region.
So the keys to running a successful business. Got to have great people. Keep going.
You got to have great people. You have to have a great work ethic. You have to there has to be a collaboration. It's a team approach. Networking is so key, and that's what organizations like mine do.
You always say you have terrific events all the time. You bring people together to meet other people.
Those opportunities to build relationships are incredibly important. And every single time, whether they come to a business seminar, whether they come to a networking event, even if they come to an after-hours card exchange where it's a little bit more relaxed and fun, they're building a network and they're building relationships, and people will help each other. You know, when people trust you and like you and get to know you, they'll want to help you. And that's what we preach all the time.
The preceding program has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence, and 13 for WNET, NJTV, and WHYY. Funding for this edition of Caucus, New Jersey has been provided by Josh S. Weston, Investors Bank, Berkeley College, Suez, Delta Dental of New Jersey, Johnson & Johnson, and by the New Jersey Office of the Insurance Fraud Prosecutor. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. Caucus, New Jersey has been produced in partnership with TriStar Studios.
Think this is absurd? Insurance fraud costs every New Jersey family over $1,300 every year. Report fraud at njinsurancefraud.org.